Hello and welcome to Brewers Daily. I'm your host, Dave Gasper. Lots to get to here on a Wednesday show. We got another hitter highlight coming up. Also, got some notes out of Brewers spring training as that continues to roll along here. Also, a potential trade partner may have just popped up. We'll get into that coming up later on in the show here. But I want to talk about the game here for the Brewers against Team Great Britain, in which they lost 7-3. Again, results don't really matter much in spring training, but the Brewers somehow lost to the Brits in this game. Now, I will also add that for this game, the Brits were using a lot of the Brewers pitchers to get through this game. You had, or at least having a couple of them available. DL Hall pitched the first 3 innings for Team Great Britain. Okay, DL Hall is very much from Georgia. Okay, he is as Georgia sounding as it gets, and he ended up pitching the first 3 innings for them. So, and that was just kind of part of, they wanted to kind of manage their pitching workload for the guys they have. They only have so many pitchers, and just wanting to have them actually usable for the World Baseball Classic. So they borrowed DL Hall for 3 innings there, and then they went through a bunch of their other pitchers for about an inning or so. But it was some struggles on the Brewers' end in this game. Jared Koenig ended up giving up 5 runs in a third of an inning. More on that in a little bit here. But Jacob Misiorowski went 2 innings, struck out 5. Doesn't really surprise much, but he did give up a run, a walk, then a couple of blue hits. Aaron Ashby, 2 innings, gave up a run that was unearned. So some defensive struggles there. And they ended up, going down 7 runs, and they put a couple on the board. Akil Baddoo homered, which was nice to see. David Hamilton homered, and hey, we just talked about this the other day for the Quantum Leap this year. Pat Murphy predicted David Hamilton for the Quantum Leap, and we were kind of like, I don't know, maybe. And then David Hamilton immediately does that. So, hey. Perhaps Pat Murphy does know what he's talking about after all. So, the Brewers got a couple of things offensively, but not a ton when they're facing Great Britain. So, not great. Pat Murphy himself, not very pleased after the game. He was talking to reporters, and he said the performance was piss poor. His quote, "That's the best adjective I can use for if this was a real game. If this was the type of effort, the type of execution, you'd have to say piss poor on both ends, offensively and defensively, but we'll get that squared away and we'll get back to playing our type of baseball." So, Pat Murphy was some choice words for his team. They obviously did not play the best. You wanted to play a little bit better. Again, this game doesn't count, but you're facing off against Team Great Britain as they're preparing for the World Baseball Classic. You want to put together a pretty good effort against these guys, and they weren't really able to. So, perhaps that'll be what wakes them up. And they're certainly going to need it as well. So, tough game, but spring training, don't really care too much about that. So, anyways, but kind of one of the bigger things here I want to talk about here in our spring training notes that has been coming out. Jared Koenig, a big piece of this game, giving up those 5 runs, obviously, when he came into this game, which was... not great. Not what you want in a third of an inning. His ERA sitting at 135. That's oof. But he ends up giving up. Let's see, as he goes through the inning here, gives up a walk, then a homer, then a ground rule double after that, then a single, then a walk. Then you get the pitching change to replace him, and then another single to allow 2 runs to score, and those 2 runs get charged to Jared Koenig. So Koenig giving up some hard contact here, and I've talked about Koenig previously and just kind of looking at the bullpen picture, and that really he is someone who I would expect to be a regular and basically a lock for this big league roster. But for Koenig, you also can't really have too many games where you give up 5 runs in a third of an inning. So Pat Murphy talked about that as well, giving up more than usual loud contact so far this spring. But apparently the Brewers are not worried yet. Keyword there is yet. not worried. He did have a high workload last year, as Pat Murphy pointed out. Apparently also Koenig dropped weight over the offseason, so dropped a few pounds. So maybe not quite at full strength from where he was last year. For most of us, dropping a few pounds over the winter, that sounds great. That sounds fantastic. For the professional athletes, I mean, they got to kind of be at their fighting weight, their playing weight. And if he's below that, it's hard to be at the strength where you normally are. So Murph said they're trying to get the strength back up and get him back throwing the way that they know that he can. So not worried about it yet, but he is going to have to, eat whatever he has to, get the weight back up, get the strength back up, and continue to try and deliver some results. Because if you keep on having those games where you're giving up a ton of loud contact, it's not gonna help your cause to make the team, especially when there are so many pitchers that are competing for roster spots. If you have struggles like that, I mean, Koenig I think could largely be on cruise control and just have a fine normal spring. Doesn't have to have any sort of spectacular spring, but just a fine normal one, and he'd be a lock for a job in the bullpen. But if you really struggle in spring, that can allow someone else to come up and take your spot. And when we were talking the other day about guys who are out of options as well, that's another thing for Koenig as well, because he still does have an option remaining. Just kind of looking at his roster here, because he's still under 5 years of MLB service, despite how long he seems like he's been around. He didn't have much MLB service time before the Brewers got him. So he's 32 years old, but he still has 2 minor league options remaining. So the Brewers could option Koenig if he really continues to struggle and just keep him stashed there in AAA until he figures things out again. But I think we're still a ways away from that decision being made. Also coming out as notes here from Brewers camp, today is going to be the day that Christian Yelich makes his Cactus League debut. So when you're looking for the game today, you're going to see Yelich in there for a little bit. That's very exciting. Also, on perhaps the less exciting front, Brandon Woodruff and Quinn Priester may not be ready for opening day. The Brewers kind of seem to be going back and forth in this. If they stay on their current schedule, they're not going to quite be ready in time. It might be a few days after. So, they might still be in that opening day rotation, but they might be, pitching third or fourth in the order, just giving them a couple extra days as this build up and ramp up continues. So, obviously Woodruff dealing with the lat issue. Priester had the wrist issue at the end of last season, so it slowed their offseason buildup, which has slowed their spring buildup. So we'll see if that progresses as the spring goes along, but as of right now, I mean, you could be looking at Jacob Misiorowski as your opening day starter, which don't hate the idea of, certainly don't hate that, but that is perhaps a bit unexpected given it was supposed to be Brandon Woodruff. Just as the vested veteran, he would be the one that make the most logical sense to be the opening day starter. But as of right now, it could end up being Jacob Misiorowski. They have not named who it is yet. They're going to wait and see how Woodruff continues to build up as things go along. All right. Now I want to get to our hitter highlight for today. And today we're going to be looking at the switch hitter, Blake Perkins. So Perkins, he's generally your fourth outfielder on this team. He does get a lot of playing time. Pat Murphy loves him. Brewers picked him up when he was a minor league free agent. The Brewers signed him to a major league deal, and he's gotten quite a bit of playing time. Pat Murphy has said that he would send himself down to the minor leagues before he sends Blake Perkins down. So there's certainly a lot of love for what he brings, and most of it is on the defensive end, obviously, with Blake Perkins. He is an absolute, he was Gold Glove finalist in 2024 in center field. Just, I don't think, played enough in order to actually end up winning the award. But incredibly fast, really strong arm, as we've seen a couple of times, him throwing out runners. And being a switch hitter. Great kid, great guy to have on the team. But offensively, he does kind of leave a little bit to be desired. Just kind of looking at his raw numbers, he's about an 81 OPS plus kind of guy. OPS around 650, slightly under for the past 2 years. Last season hit 226, 298 on base, had 3 homers, 6 doubles. So it's not going to hit a ton. Now, granted, he did miss the first couple of months last season with a broken shin. which is never fun. And it took him quite a long time in order to actually be able to get back just to being on the field, getting back into game action. It took him a while to get there. So that slowed his progression offensively. He went from nearly around 400 at bats in 2024 to about 150 at bats last year, and yeah, really cut into his playing time. But for Perkins, I think we're kind of at around the ceiling here. I mean, for him, it's going to be about a 650 to 700 OPS, somewhere in that range. I don't think there's a ton more upside in there to be unlocked. He's a switch hitter, great. He can be fast, can steal some bases when he gets on base. That's great. So I think there's certainly value in what he brings as a fourth outfielder, as a switch hitter. He's not going to hurt you that much offensively. Again, around an 80, 85 OPS plus. So 15 to 20% below league average. But he can hit at a decent-ish clip, probably around 230, 240 for a batting average. Not going to be a ton of pop. There's some, but not a ton, and going to have some speed. But also what he does really well is he does not chase, which is something that the Brewers definitely love and is a big highlight for him and really up and down their lineup. They like guys who do not chase outside of the zone, don't expand the zone at all. Had a really good chase rate last year of just 18.5%. So he was staying inside the strike zone. That's very important. That's very good to have for the Brewers and their whole philosophy in terms of offense. But, in terms of slug, hitting the ball hard, elite bat speed, doesn't really have that a ton. So, again, there's not too much more upside to dream on here. I think at this point, Blake Perkins is what he is offensively. He's going to be a 230, 240 hitter with about a 650 to 700 OPS. And he's going to steal some bases and just play some absolutely phenomenal defense out there in center field. That's what he's going to bring, and I would imagine he brings it for the entire season for the Brewers. How much he plays is going to depend on Garrett Mitchell's health, I think, and how Garrett Mitchell continues to progress. Once we get him, playing every single day, if he proves he can be able to hit lefties, I would imagine for at least the early going, Perkins is going to get the starts in center field against left-handed pitchers. But still, how much Perkins ends up playing, I think a lot of it will depend on how well Garrett Mitchell does, how healthy he remains, and if he's able to prove that he can hit against left-handed pitching. So that is Blake Perkins heading into this 2026 season. I do like Blake. I really do. Great dude. Great guy to talk to in the clubhouse. The offensive upside, I think we've seen what that is for Perkins. Okay. I want to get to this now because this was kind of some big news across Major League Baseball. The Atlanta Braves have lost Jurickson Profar for the season because he tested positive for steroids again. So this is the second time he's tested positive. So 162 game ban. That leaves them kind of missing a piece in their left field DH rotation. And it also means that they don't have to pay that salary. So it takes about, $18 million off of their payroll, because also them in the luxury tax. So that opens up some room for them to try and make some further additions. They are incredibly shallow in the pitching department. They have some top guys like Chris Sale. Okay, awesome, fantastic. But the depth behind those guys, they've already lost a couple to elbow surgery. And I really just kind of think they could use some more potential depth. The Brewers have some. So they could look to spend that money on pitching. So I wonder if there could be a trade had there. I wonder if maybe a DL Hall could make sense. DL Hall's from Georgia. So that certainly, very much, would be a homecoming. He doesn't have any control over that, but still, I wonder if that's a possibility, or for just kind of replacing, Jurickson Profar here, Tyler Black, as we've kind of talked about here too. I mean, he can play left field. He can DH. He's not going to cost you a ton of money. But still, I mean, that could be a possibility to fill that spot because Profar is going to be out for the entire season. He is appealing the suspension, but, I think that he's going to have a hard time actually winning that. But anyways, so I just wonder if there's a possibility for a trade here. I'm not sure what exactly the Brewers will be looking to get back in return. It could be prospects. It could be something to help out in the immediate term here. But, I'm not trying to say that the Brewers are going to be the ideal trade partner for the Atlanta Braves for whatever they're doing. But I do think the Atlanta Braves are going to do something now that they have lost Jerks and Profar for the season. Could it be a trade with the Brewers? It could be. I'm just speculating here that that's a possibility. If they want to look for some pitching depth, the Brewers do have some there because the Braves probably should look for some pitching depth. And also, I mean, if they're looking for some corner outfield DH potential help, Tyler Black could be a possibility that could make some sense. The Brewers do have some other corner outfielders outside of obviously their top ones. You know, it's not going to be a Churio, it's not going to be a Frelick or anything like that. It's not going to be a Yelich. Don't get any thoughts up on that either. But it's a possibility. You know, there are other guys down the roster that, you know, if they're looking at later in the spring here, they need to get someone in. That could be a route that they go. So keep an eye on the Atlanta Braves and what they could potentially be doing. Again, not sure it's going to end up being with Milwaukee, but they're going to do something. So we'll keep an eye on that. And if something does happen with Milwaukee, we'll be talking about it right here on Brewers Daily. So be sure to subscribe, get notified every single time a new episode drops. Also follow me on Twitter at dgasper24. Appreciate you watching, appreciate you enjoying, and we'll see you again next time for another episode of Brewers Daily.